the Gen 9 games concluding with the latest epilogue release, many fans are wondering about the future. What game will come out next? My first belief is that we aren't getting any more Pokemon games for the Switch. In fact, whisperings of the next generation console for Nintendo are hotter than ever, and what would be a fantastic early game for that console but the next Pokemon game? It just makes too much sense. Pokemon has always been a console seller, and having the next game be this winter or early next year to align with the birth of a new system makes so much sense. As for what that game would be, I have several ideas. The safest call would be to suspect a remaster of Black and White handled by the developers ILCA, the people behind Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl's remasters. This time, however, I'm hoping that ILCA will do more than just reuse code and completely overhaul the designs and characters, a remake more akin to ORAS. But I'm not getting my hopes up. Despite being remasters and not remakes, DDSP sold extremely well, so it's likely we'll get the same for Gen 5 games. However, I'm optimistic that ILCA will do a bit more, and I'm settling my sights on a remake of the Dream World concept, accessible through the games, with maybe a side event introducing some new forms for old Pokemon in addition to getting access to hidden abilities. Heck, I'd even settle for a bundle where both the original and the sequels are bundled together and sold as a single game. But I don't think a Black and White remake are enough to be a system seller, and I doubt Nintendo will think so too. So instead, I propose that the next game Gamefreak reveals will be a new Legends game, slated to release spring of 2025. A new Legends game would definitely move while it's more than a remaster of an old DS game. As for the region it's set in, with overwhelming hints to Johto and Unova, either would be a safe bet, though I personally would love to see Kalos and the Pokemon War that AZ was a part of, perhaps with AZ's Floette actually being a regional variant of the past, but I digress. As Legends Arceus could easily be tied to both Johto and Unova, and with both regions having historic lore of the legendary beasts and the original dragon respectively, there's a lot that the devs could build off of. I personally think that a Legends Celebi game would be interesting. However, instead of being set in Johto, like we would expect, it's set in Unova, where Celebi sends the player both to the past and the future of the region. As a story, I feel it would be really cool if you're tasked with separating the original dragon in the past, and then reuniting it in the future to save the timeline. There could be heavy ties to Johto as well, with many characters and Pokemon migrating there in the past and staying into the future. For regional forms, it would be really cool to see how Pokemon changed over time. Now, I know that would be one heck of an epic story, and one heck of a large game to create. Perhaps too ambitious for Gamefreak in its current state, but Gamefreak has sort of promised to take a bit more time with their games, and if they're given a new system and more time, something like this could very well be possible. Fresh off of the ending of Generation 9, Generation 10 could be the next big project reveal. To me, the timing doesn't quite feel right, as many people are still thoroughly enjoying and satisfied with Scarlet and Violet, so I doubt the next game Gamefreak reveals will be the next generation. Yet, given a couple of years, we could very well be ready for Gen 10. And when you hit such a big number as 10, I kind of expect Gamefreak to come out of the gate swinging. Huge tie-ins to characters across all regions. I feel like fitting themes for the box legendaries, everything and nothing, could be quite interesting. I could also easily see the 7 virtues and vices being tied into that concept as well, creating interesting character and Pokemon designs. This could all tie together to the idea of deceptive fame, a fame where you seem to have everything, but in fact you have nothing, and could be the leading inspiration behind the return of a big classic villain who's over the top, like Lysandre or Giovanni. Maybe all the gym leaders are led by a corrupt champion, whose only goal is fame, with corruption being rampant in the whole structure. As for the region's real-world inspiration, I personally feel like a place such as Africa or Australia could be a really cool basis for the narrative, tying into the greed of colonization against the humility and destructive of natives. But that's a pretty deep tie-in, and I don't know if Pokemon is willing to go there. Moving away from the story, mechanics I hope to see returning from older games would be a battle tower or post-game facility to encourage players to build competitive teams for the fun of it. Though competitive Pokemon has gotten better, these last couple of Switch titles didn't really have a reason to grind for a fully competitive Pokemon team post-game, and having something return like the World Cup from Black and White in Generation 10 would heavily encourage and get people building competitive teams on console again. The biggest innovation I'd love to see is level scaling, or at least a competent difficulty setting from the start of the game. This would let Gamefreak still introduce new fans to the series, while letting veterans of the franchise be able to take on meatier challenges we have been waiting for. And you thought I was done, wasn't I? No, we haven't touched the spin-offs yet. The next spin-off game, aside from Pokemon Legends, which you could argue whether or not it's a spin-off in the comments down below, I see Gamefreak committing to, is another Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. After fan excitement with the Sync feature, I think the best series to capitalize on the sensation of being your favorite Pokemon is Mystery Dungeon. I see this being the next spin-off game, as the remake of Red and Blue Mystery Dungeon DX is selling relatively well, but with the reception modest compared to what Gamefreak is used to, I could see them also turning to a different series. If that's the case, I would personally love to have a new Pokemon Rumble game without microtransactions and shiny locked Pokemon. What Pokemon spin-off series would you like to return? Finally, I have a pie-in-the-sky idea for a completely new Pokemon spin-off game. It may not be as original as I may think, but I personally find a Pokemon sim game where the focus is raising Pokemon and building a town alongside Pokemon, like Animal Crossing, would be a cool look at how Pokemon will be used in everyday life. But I don't know how feasible that idea would be, especially when Pokemon has so many other spin-off titles that they would be better off bringing back instead. But what do you think? Which game do you think will be announced next and when? That's just been some of my thoughts, and I will see you guys all in the next video. Bye!